Welcome to Frontline Conversations. We have with us Nilakantan R.S., data scientist and author of the best selling book, South versus North India's Great Divide. And when we talk about North versus South or the divide between the two regions, a burning topic at present is that of delimitation or redrawing of boundaries of the Lok Sabha and Assembly constituencies, which is scheduled to happen after 2026. And the states in the south are up in arms. They feel that they will have a raw deal if delimitation is undertaken based on the current population figures. So, we'll be talking to Ilakantan about the various aspects of this raging debate. Welcome, Nilakantan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us for a discussion on delimitation. So, to begin with, I would like to ask you about how you look at the numerical and the political ramifications of delimitation if it were to be undertaken based on the current population figures,
Before we,
especially from the point of view of the southern states.
I think before we do that, I think we should situate delimitation in what is delimitation doesn't exist in isolation. Uh, I think delimitation should be viewed in the context of increasing divergence amongst India states. And when I say India states, particularly southern India and central and northern India, right? In terms of their achievements in development metrics such as health, in education, economic opportunities, southern India, some states are almost as good as OECD countries. Some states are sort of in between, upper middle income levels. Whereas, much of central and northern India happen to be at the levels of sub-Saharan Africa, right? So there is this fundamental difference. Now, this difference, while it means many things to many people, from a policy making perspective, it presents a unique conundrum, which is that nobody, however clever you are, you can't sit in Delhi and come up with the same policy for, let's say, the state of Kerala and the state of Madhya Pradesh, because the state of, in terms of health, right? Because the state of Kerala has an IMR of 5 and the state of Madhya Pradesh has somewhere around 46, if I'm not wrong. 5 is what the United States has. 45, 46 is what Afghanistan has. Nobody, it doesn't matter how clever you are, you cannot come up with a single policy that governs, or rather, with the same health policy for the United States and Afghanistan. And just like that, you can't come up with the same policy for Kerala and Madhya Pradesh. Except what is happening in the recent few decades is that the union government is increasingly centralizing these policies, which was supposed to be under state governments. And because of this increasing centralization, policy making has moved to Delhi for the large part because it has the power of the purse, and because through that it's becoming one of these things where any government in Delhi is going to make policies for the more populous and parts of the country wherein they get more MPs from, and therefore that policy gets imposed on these states where they don't work, and those states happen to be in southern India, right? Now, this is true for education, this is true for health, this is true for policies on economic policy making, so on and so forth. Now, when this is the case, in a normal democracy, what do? You use your electoral power to go and fight against it. Except what is happening there is that you cannot fight against it if the delimitation happens, because the very weapon that you use in a democracy is now going to be turned against you, using the very argument of democracy, saying that because we have more people, therefore we will have more MPs. And on top of this, what you have is that the resource allocation problems, which are adjacent to this, which is the fiscal devolution, again are using the same argument. So exactly the time wherein the states in southern India are at the precipice of moving to moving away from the middle income trap into sort of upper middle income societies. That's exactly the time where they need greater amount of resources, right? For instance, if you take health, the kinds of intervention that you need to move from sort of a base level to slightly higher level is relatively easy. You just, have a greater number of basic health facilities, primary health facilities, so on and so forth, and you can sort of achieve a reasonable amount of improvement in your health metrics. But to move from that level to the next is very difficult because, people that there are people like you and me who sort of need tertiary care because we've kind of sort of solved the basic levels, right? That requires A, more money, B, policy making at the level of the state, and C, an MP to fight for these things. The trifecta that is affecting the southern states is that all these three are getting, severely impacted, and delimitation is the point in the trifecta which actually affects the other two vertices of that triangle, so to speak, and therefore we are in this pickle.
So, you've basically placed the debate in the midst of a conversation about the socio-economic status of the southern states and how much they contribute in to the economy of the country, and that they are poised to achieve greater development in coming years, and that is going to be affected if their say in national politics goes down, as they fear would happen if delimitation were to happen based on population figures, right? But how do you bring about a balance between the basic principle on which delimitation is based, which is every vote should have the same value? So the principle is that of one person, one vote, one value. And how do you balance that with, uh, the need to ensure that the political relevance of the states in the south, that is maintained?
So, what is the underlying? So we have to go back. The question that you ask is reasonable if we were to assume a hypothetical situation of utopian, right? Wherein we have a country or any society for that matter, wherein there are n number of sort of voters or people, so to speak, or citizens. And, in a democracy, as you rightly said, the fundamental assumption is that one person, one vote, right? The value part of it, let's park that aside. I don't even know what that means, right? But one person, one vote is, a requirement of what is a just society. Fair, right? The problem, and this was okay. To start with, there are much smaller states such as those in the northeast, Lakshadweep, Daman and Diu, etc., where even though their populations are actually much lower, they still have one MP each in many of those parts, or the number of MPs is actually fixed. And the reason for that is we want those places to have sort of representation. In terms of as entities, political entities, and not just based on their population. Fair, right? But if you compare large states and take them alone, in the 70s, they did have, after the last delimitation, before the delimitation exercise was frozen, the it was roughly one person, one vote. If you basically did a calculation of the impact of every voter in the southern states versus the states in central and northern India that we just spoke about, it was within a margin of error of plus or minus 2%. Yeah. Now, if you take since the mid 70s to the last election, currently the average voter in Tamil Nadu, for instance, is 40% more powerful than the average voter in Madhya Pradesh. Now, why did this happen? It happened entirely because of a population growth. And that population growth, the policy that is under the Indira Gandhi administration, was considered a policy of national importance. Yeah. Now, if you have w- in 1976, the average Tamil voter and the average voter, you take a random constituency in Tamil Nadu, let's call it Pollachi, yeah, and take a random constituency in Madhya Pradesh, yeah, consider Guna. If you basically did a basic calculation saying that what is the impact or the probability of an individual voter electing an MP, that is the probability of your vote sort of being the deciding vote in electing your MP. If you were to calculate that probability, which is the ultimate sort of measure of a voter's worth, so to speak, right? That in Pollachi and that in Guna in 1976 were roughly equal. Right now, that in Pollachi is about 40% higher than that in Guna. Yeah. Now, what changed? Nothing changed. It's just the population that changed. Yeah. Now, in this, you have to ask, why did the population change? We had a policy at the national level which basically said we have to implement population control. Yeah. And it's not as if just because a politician says we will have population control policy, people are going to have lesser kids. The most important element of a population control policy is not the control part of it, but it is sending girl children to school, right? Now, if you look at the data with the number of years of schooling that a girl child has versus the fertility rate of that particular state, it's a perfect correlation. Yeah, you cannot get better than that. So in the early 80s, after in Tamil Nadu's case, after NGR came up with the midday meal scheme, the gender divergence between boys and girls in terms of gross enrollment ratio just vanished, and girls started going in schools in just as high numbers, and the result of that is that they sort of spent more time in school. Significant number of them went on to college. The female labor force participation increased, which is the result. The result of all of this is that Tamil Nadu now accounts for about 44% of all women employed in all of the manufacturing sector in the country, right? So, Tamil Nadu is about what, 6 to 7% of the country's population. 44% of all women who work in India in manufacturing happen to be in Tamil Nadu, right? Now, that is what is the intended purpose of what was the policy of national importance, right? Now, if Delhi were to turn back and say, hey, by the way, yeah, you did all that, but the result of all of that is going to be that you're going to lose all your political representation. That is not a good look, right? So, what do you do here, right? So, no, nobody in their right mind is arguing that in a democracy, the person in Pollachi should be 40% more powerful than the person in Guna, or vice versa. Nobody's arguing that the person in Guna should be worth only 60% worth of what the person in Pollachi is. Nobody's arguing that. But this is in effect of uneven implementation or uneven governance across these two states. What do you do? Is the Tamil person to pay for the misgovernance in some other state which he or she has no control of? That seems unfair. You could flip this and argue, hey, so are you going to sort of punish future children born in Madhya Pradesh just because their parents' generation had terrible governance, and that seems unfair as well. So the only answer to this question is to investigate what the implicit assumption of your question is, which is, should we have an overtly centralized union with overtly centralized policy making powers? That is the question to sort of look at, right? Because if you don't do that, elections and sort of power sharing is a zero sum game by definition. So you're not going to arrive at a good solution. Either you have to punish this somebody's success, or you have to reward somebody's failure. Neither of which is a good look, right? So the only answer is to sort of eliminate the attractiveness of the prize, which is governance in Delhi, right? So you decentralize as much as possible, send those powers back to states, and sort of run like a, what the Americans used to call, run defense, postal service, and something of communications, and then send everything else to the state. If you don't want to do it to that extreme, at least start by taking a look at the in the budget they call what are the central flagship programs, right? Just the spending on the central flagship programs is about 3.5 times the total devolution to all states. Is that fair? All of that, the central government is essentially spending on what are state subjects. Instead, a better way to do this would be to send all that money to the states so that the states spend on state subjects or what ought to be state subjects. And, the union government has lesser and lesser power so that people both in Tamil Nadu and in Madhya Pradesh or in Uttar Pradesh worry less about the government in Delhi and worry more about the government in their state, so that, we sort of sidestep the problem as opposed to solving it.
Right. But that cannot happen immediately. I suppose the solution that you're offering will take some time, to be implemented.
This is and those, no, the you have a problem. It has, either you do delimitation or you don't do delimitation, or you do something else, which some of the scholars have proposed, which is, either sort of increasing the number of seats, which is, I don't know, do they think we can't do arithmetic, which is that because, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many MPs you send. What matters is the ratio, right? Like, are you go like if you basically increase the number of seats, but you apportion the seats in the Lok Sabha in the ratio of the population, it makes no difference. At the like I said, it's a zero-sum game. So that is no solution at all. Or what some others have argued is to sort of improve the I mean, tinker with the Rajya Sabha such that the Rajya Sabha has greater representation. Make it, an extreme example would be to make it the equivalent of the American Senate. Lighter example would be to sort of, have at least, make the Rajya Sabha have sufficient veto powers, at least the existing structure. All of that are tinkering in the margins without sort of, ignoring the fact that the Lok Sabha is who elects the government. So, to answer your question, if what I'm saying seems distant, the solutions that are immediate are disastrous. So you might as well sort of consider the solution that is distant and probably might work as opposed to choosing one of these disastrous options.
A more immediate issue that has to be dealt with, like you said, a constituency in the south is overrepresented compared to a constituency in the north. So, how does one deal with that more immediate kind of a problem that we have at right now?
It's the same thing, right? Like, it's not as if it's overrepresented. We have to understand this. The average constituency in the South still has, by global standards, the ratio between the MP to the number of citizens is extraordinarily high. And you need to understand this, right? It's not as if southern India is like a sparsely populated area of the world. It's an extremely densely populated area of the world. That is not under question at all. It is that northern India is even more densely populated with obscene levels of, ratio between citizens to MP, right? Now, the way to solve for this is not to sort of, make the person in Pollachi less powerful. It is to sort of make the MP less powerful so that whatever the MP does is less impactful on their lives on a day-to-day basis, and make sure that MLA is more powerful so that, and make sure that, states have a greater ability to sort of raise taxes and spend on their own and send as little as possible to Delhi so that we sort of avoid this problem, right? If we don't do that, any other solution that you think of is going to result in winners and losers in a democracy, which is dangerous.
And how do you look at the debate which is taking place right now? Do you see some sort of an imbalance even in that debate where the center has a greater play? I mean, the argument being put forth by the center has a greater play compared to what is being said by the states in the south.
To be honest with you, I don't follow the media from Delhi, so I wouldn't be able to comment because I'm tired of them. But it doesn't surprise me that the union government's view is given greater play. I'm sure it is, right? Y- the but right thinking people in southern states have started asking these questions, right? I have been raising this for more than a decade now, and my book came about. There have been others who have written sufficiently about it, and now it has reached the political mainstream. So I'm glad that this is happening. The response of the union government, I don't know. If you're referring to when they say greater play, if you're referring to television coverage of it, I don't watch it, and I don't think that carries much weight. And I don't think they're serious themselves, so I don't think it matters. But the greater argument is, I think the implicit question that you have is, how do we convince the median person in the northern plains that this is something that is serious, and the solution to this is a greater amount of decentralization as opposed to sort of apportioning it, or rather fighting the zero sum game? That's a serious question. And if your question is, if the government in Delhi is not sort of looking at those kinds of solutions, and instead is sort of digging its heels and the same battle and win the zero sum game, because it's, even if it wins, it's going to be a pyrrhic victory. If it loses, it's going to be disastrous, and therefore it is not a fight to fight at all, is something that the voters need to know. And I don't think the government in Delhi is doing that. So if you're telling me that the government is in Delhi is choosing the wrong strategy in terms of its public communication, well, hey, I agree, but I don't think I'm in control of that.
And how do you look at the solutions which are being suggested by parties down south? A 6 point resolution was passed by the parties in Tamil Nadu, and they've asked the center to extend the 1971 census based delimitation for another 30 years. how feasible do you think that?
There is a certain logic to it. You can't deny that, which is, the sidestepping. Let's say that, we are going to adopt a solution which looks at extreme decentralization as an option. Like you rightly said, it cannot be done tomorrow. We need time, right? So you should see this 30-year period as a time in which we implement that decentralization. Yeah. And if you look at it like that way, which is that you don't look at the 30 years as a sort of solution or kicking the can down the road, but instead take it as a sort of a taking a step back to basically say the structure of government of the Union of India is overtly centralized, and therefore that is the real problem, and we need to undo that. And the time taken, the time we take in order to undo that is going to be relatively long, and therefore we'll use this 3-decade period to basically change the structure of the government of India. Well, that's a reasonable solution, but I don't think the DMK has gone to the extent of saying that we'll use this 30-year period to, decentralize union government. But if it were me, I would have drafted it that way. But at least the first part, which is let's, create a time window for us to think of solutions, is a useful idea.
Right. And how do you look at, the chief ministers in the South, like M.K. Stalin and Chandrababu Naidu? They have called on families to have a greater number of children. Saying that we need to boost our population growth. Huh?
Okay. So I saw the video clip that of MK Stalin. He has not asked for people to have 16 children, right? I think that has been misreported by again the media in Delhi, which does not understand Tamil. Probably I saw that he's making a joke and an ironic statement out of what is a misunderstood Tamil sort of blessing, right? So I think we should keep that aside. N. Chandrababu Naidu, however, has been doing this for a very long time. He does believe, forget delimitation. He does believe that, N. Chandrababu Naidu has been sort of in the Elon Musk camp of economic growth even before Elon Musk came there. So he's been doing this for a very long time. In other words, he's of the belief that in order to achieve greater GDP growth, you need greater population, and he somehow seems to not worry about the per capita GDP, and he seems to think of the absolute GDP matters. I disagree, and that's been N. Chandrababu Naidu's sort of position for a very long time. It's been his position for 3 decades now, so that doesn't surprise me. But I don't think M.K. Stalin has said that, and I think we should be careful in not clubbing these two together.
Right. And to ask you about some of the yeah.
To be fair, and we should also sort of, we live in 2025 where the effects of climate change are upon all of us, and it is human induced, and we have 8 billion people. We're not running out of people anytime soon. And so, given that we face rather the planet as we know it faces an existential threat, we shouldn't be adding, more fuel to the fire. In this case, fuel happens to be human beings. So we should be careful about that.
While delimitation is being looked at as North versus South kind of an issue, Manish Tiwari, the Lok Sabha MP of the Congress, has said that even states in the North would be losing seats like Punjab and Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh would not be gaining any seats. So, should we even look at this issue as a North versus South matter? Or is it something which needs a more, national kind of
Absolutely.
research?
Right. It is, in fact, what I would argue is it is a Bimaru state versus others problem, right? Because if you look at it,
Right.
in 1971 and 2011, the total population, 2011 is the last year for which we have census data. The total population growth of the state with the lowest population growth was Kerala, which was at 56%. The state with the highest growth in this time was Rajasthan with about 166 or 167%. How can you have a union wherein one state grows more than 3 times the other? You cannot, right? Like, you will run into all kinds of resource allocation problems if you maintain the structure of government to be a constant, right? So I agree. And Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, for instance, has had less than replacement fertility rate again for close to a generation. Punjab, in other words, is while it may be situated in North India for all practical purposes in this argument in the South versus North, because it's a shorthand for basically saying Bimaru versus others, because that's an ugly way of stating things. If Punjab then belongs to the southern camp, right? Like, so I take your point in that South versus North is a is it's a sensationalist slash alarmist way of representing things, regardless of my book being titled that. And we should it should be taken as an ironic mock. If it is not, and people start taking it literally, we will run into problems. And I agree with you that, if your argument is, hey, why did you do it? Well, I thought, jokes are meant to be made, but apparently not.
Okay. Delimitation is also linked to, providing reservation to women in the Lok Sabha and the Assembly. So there is a gender aspect also associated with delimitation. So how would you look at that?
I disagree. I don't think these issues are related at all. I think it's been linked primarily for political expediency, right? Especially by the incumbent government. Like how are these two even related? The apportioning of seats in the parliament versus who gets to represent one of those seats are entirely unrelated questions, right? These become linked if and only if you're looking at increasing the number of seats. If you have a priori decided that increasing the number of seats and increasing it while retaining the southern states representation as one, and making those increases reflecting the kitty of the northern states, then yeah, and then you imagine, the additional seats to be sort of, taken over by women. It's a calculation of political expediency. These things are, as a philosophical idea, these are unrelated ideas, right? They can both exist and they should not be seen as, related to each other.
Talking about political expediency, one way of looking at this entire debate is that perhaps the BJP, because it has been doing well in the northern states, and apart from Karnataka to a certain extent in Telangana, it has not been able to, kind of expand its footprint in the south. It is keen on delimitation. So, do you find merit in this view?
Well, to be fair to the BJP is doing what is in the interests of its core vote base, which happens to be these states of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, all of these states in the Hindi belt that we just spoke of, right? And these states have an above average fertility. And while you might argue that it is politically convenient for the BJP to actually seek delimitation, it is also true that it is in the interests of the people in those areas to ask for that. Not like, that political expediency and the voice of the voters happen to converge is something that we need to acknowledge, right? Just like it is convenient for the DMK to raise this, and it is also in the interest of the Tamil people to sort of, raise this. That's true for, Telangana, but and therefore the Congress is hopefully doing that. Or it's true for Karnataka. Hopefully the Congress is doing that. I don't see the Congress being as vocal about it as the DMK is, for instance. It's true in Punjab. I hope the AAP does that, but I haven't seen the AAP do this at all, right? So to answer your question, it is, if the purpose of an MP and therefore a political party is to represent the will of the people and transmit their, wishes of how they should be governed. It is true that the average person in Uttar Pradesh wants a greater ratio of MP to citizens, and therefore we are doing this, right? It's a philosophically just position, so to speak, right? I do not bemoan the BJP for doing that, but however, if you want the Indian Union to survive, what should you do in order for it to survive is a different question, which, I have proposed decentralization. Somebody else might propose something else. But if we were to assume that we are stuck in this zero-sum game, the job of the BJP is to represent its voters. Its voters live in the Indo-Gangetic Plains, and their demand is this, and therefore it is doing this. So, while I might not agree with it, I think that's how politics is supposed to work in a democracy.
In the end, I want to ask you, I mean, we are looking at delimitation and the other issues also, the three language formula, the NEP, and also the latest controversy with regard to the rupee symbol being replaced by the traditional Tamil symbol for Rubaya in the Tamil Nadu budget papers. So, in the midst of this deepening divide, so to speak, between the North and the South that we are witnessing, how do we look at the situation in terms of the national ethos? Is it a dangerous unfolding of events that we are, witness to at present?
So it depends on what you consider dangerous, right? What all of these point to is a simple thing, which is that the Indian Union in its current form has multiple fissures and fractions, and they're increasingly becoming unviable. Unless we change the structure of government, either through rapid, extreme decentralization, and therefore changing B.R. Ambedkar wanted like a very powerful central government because he thought, the sort of parochial interests at the state level will result in extreme oppression in those places, and therefore he wanted the union government to be stronger. Well, times have changed now. It's and that idea of a post-colonial society sort of wanting a strong union government in order to deal with the fissures, and therefore not wanting to break away, and ending up in civil war. I think we have comfortably crossed that phase. So we should now think of, is there like a scope for a second way of running this Indian Union, and is that way like an extreme decentralization, which is closer to the European Union than it is to the Indian Union? I think we should think about that. And if we don't do that, all that you spoke of, these are symptoms of the impending disaster that is to come. Why is the Tamil Nadu government sort of up in arms about the NEP? It's not new. It's been against this since 1937. It's that, all governments prior to this have been sort of, while they sort of have this in policy, have never implemented it. Now, if you want to implement it, there is going to be, this kind of resistance in Tamil Nadu. The rupee symbol, like, if we, these are all tools of symbolism that political parties use in a democracy in order to fight the good fight. Now, you and I might think that it is trivial, but, trivialities are what, uh, 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 like if we were to sort of dismiss trivialities, no revolution of the past would have ever happened, because that is how you take a complicated idea to the masses.
Mm. Thank you so much, Nilakantan.